Ever wish you could just read people like a book? You know? Kind of get a glimpse into their true thoughts and feelings.
Hmm.
Well, today we're doing a deep dive into Patrick King's Read People Like a Book.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, and I've got to tell you, just going through the notes for this,
Uh-huh.
it's making me see all my interactions in a totally different light.
Yeah, it's pretty wild how much we actually communicate without even realizing it.
Right.
King really gets into the power of those nonverbal cues and how we can actually decipher them.
So, okay, let's start with like the basics.
Sure.
Why is this whole reading people thing so important?
Okay, yeah.
Like, will it really make a difference in my life?
Well, just think about it for a second.
Okay.
We are constantly bombarded with nonverbal signals. Like, think about a colleague's furrowed brow in a meeting, or a date's nervous fidgeting, or even your boss's sudden silence when you bring up a new idea.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right. Understanding these cues can be a total game changer.
Yeah.
And how you navigate all those situations.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah.
But isn't there kind of risk of overthinking things?
Hmm.
I mean, maybe my date's fidgeting because they're just uncomfortable in their chair,
Yeah.
not because they're secretly judging my taste in music or something.
That's true. And King actually emphasizes that context is everything.
Okay.
You can't just isolate a single gesture and then jump to conclusions.
Gotcha.
He uses this great analogy
Okay.
of body language clusters.
Body language clusters.
It's like piecing together a puzzle.
Okay.
You need to look for patterns of behavior to get the full picture.
So instead of freaking out because my date keeps touching their face,
Yeah,
I should look for other signs of discomfort.
exactly.
Like, are they also leaning away or avoiding eye contact?
Yeah. And King provides some really insightful examples of these clusters.
Oh, cool.
Like one that really stuck with me is the discomfort trifecta.
Okay, the discomfort trifecta.
He says if you see someone touch their face, look away and shift their weight, all within a short span of time.
Okay.
That's a strong indicator that they're feeling uneasy.
Wow, that's super specific.
Yeah.
And actually pretty easy to remember.
Right.
I'm already feeling like I'm getting some actionable tools here.
That's the beauty of King's approach.
Yeah.
He doesn't just talk about concepts in a vague way.
Uh-huh.
He gives you concrete techniques you can start using right away.
Speaking of techniques, let's get into some of those.
Okay.
What are some of the key things that King suggests for becoming a better people reader?
Well, one of the simplest yet most powerful strategies he advocates for
Okay.
is mastering the art of asking what he calls unlocking questions.
Unlocking questions.
Questions that encourage people to share more
Okay.
than just a surface level response.
Mm-hmm.
It's about going beyond the typical "how are you?"
Right.
and really getting to the heart of what makes someone tick.
So instead of asking, are you happy at your job?
Right.
Which might just get me a polite, yes, it's fine. I might try something like, what's the most rewarding project you've worked on recently?
Exactly. That kind of question invites them to share their passion,
Yeah.
their values, and their experiences in a much deeper way.
Mm-hmm.
You're essentially giving them permission to open up and reveal more of themselves.
I love that.
Right.
It feels so much more genuine than just going through the motions of small talk.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are some other techniques King recommends?
Okay.
I'm ready to add more tools to my people reading toolkit.
He talks about this technique called mirroring,
Mirroring.
which I found a bit surprising at first.
Okay.
It's the idea of subtly reflecting someone's body language
Mm-hmm.
and posture to build rapport.
Isn't that a bit manipulative?
I had the same thought.
Yeah.
But King emphasizes that it's all about subtlety.
Okay.
You're not trying to mimic their every move,
Okay.
but rather create a sense of subconscious connection.
Mm-hmm.
He says even small things,
Okay.
like matching their energy level or slightly tilting your head the same way they do,
Gotcha.
can make a big difference in building that rapport.
Okay. So it's more like finding a way to sync up with someone non-verbally,
Exactly.
not turning into their mirror image.
Right.
I can see how that could be helpful in certain situations.
Exactly. And King stresses that mirroring is just one piece of the puzzle.
Okay.
It's most effective when combined with other techniques,
Mm-hmm.
like asking those unlocking questions
Right.
and paying close attention to the context of the conversation.
This is also fascinating, but I'm wondering how I can apply it to my own life.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to become some sort of human lie detector.
Right.
What's the real value in learning to read people better?
It's about so much more than just spotting deception.
Okay.
It's about building stronger connections.
Mm-hmm.
navigating those challenging conversations,
Yeah.
and understanding the unspoken needs and emotions of the people around you.
So it's about becoming a more empathetic and effective communicator.
Precisely. And King argues that this skill can be incredibly beneficial in all areas of your life, from your personal relationships to your career.
I'm starting to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, just understanding the discomfort trifecta could have saved me from some awkward interactions in the past.
That's all right.
But I'm also realizing that there's a whole world of nonverbal communication I'm missing out on.
Well,
What else can I do to become more attuned to these subtle signals?
one of the most overlooked aspects of communication, according to King, is the power of silence.
Silence.
He encourages us to listen
Okay.
for what's not being said,
Interesting.
to pay attention to the pauses, the hesitations, the changes in tone of voice.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I've definitely had those moments where someone says that they're fine, but their voice cracks or they avert their gaze.
Yeah.
And I just know something's not right.
Exactly. Those subtle cues can be incredibly revealing.
Yeah.
King even gives the example of someone being asked about their finances.
Yeah.
If they suddenly pause or clear their throat before answering, it might indicate they're feeling uncomfortable or trying to hide something.
Wow, that's a great example.
Right.
I'm already starting to see how paying attention to those little details
Yeah.
can make a huge difference in how I interpret people's true feelings.
Absolutely.
And that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
King's book goes into much greater depth on how to decode those subtle signals.
It does.
From analyzing microexpressions to understanding the psychology behind different types of body language.
Yeah.
I'm definitely eager to learn more.
Good.
But before we dive deeper into those techniques,
Okay.
let's take a step back and talk about the different personality types King discusses.
Sure.
I'm really curious to hear his insights on how to recognize and interact with different types of people.
That's a great place to pick up in our next segment.
Okay.
He offers some fascinating insight
Okay.
into how to identify everything from introverts and extroverts to narcissists and empaths.
Okay. I'm all ears. I have a feeling I'm about to learn a lot about myself and the people in my life.
I think you will. So are you ready to dive into the world of personality types?
Absolutely.
King breaks down some common ones.
Okay.
And he even provides some tips on how to tailor your communication
Okay.
based on who you're interacting with.
It's like having a secret decoder ring for different personality styles.
Right.
Let's start with the classic introvert versus extrovert dynamic.
Sure.
Can you really spot those differences just by observing someone's body language?
King suggests it's not always about those big grand gestures,
Okay.
but rather like subtle nuances.
Okay.
He points out that introverts tend to conserve their energy in social situations.
Okay.
So you might notice them leaning back slightly,
Okay.
or opting for quieter corners at a party, or becoming more animated in one-on-one conversations rather than large groups.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I always feel drained after being in a big crowd. So maybe I'm showing some of those introvert tendencies without even realizing it.
Maybe?
What about extroverts?
Yeah.
What are some of their telltale signs?
King says extroverts often draw energy from social interaction,
Okay.
so they might lean forward when they're engaged,
Uh-huh.
use expansive hand gestures, and readily jump into conversations, even with strangers.
Okay, so if someone's holding court at a party,
Yeah.
laughing loudly, and constantly introducing themselves to new people,
Right.
they're probably leaning more towards the extrovert side.
It's a good bet. But King cautions against making those snap judgments.
Okay.
Remember, everyone is like a unique mix of traits.
Right.
He reminds us that these personality types are more like spectrums than rigid categories.
So it's more about recognizing patterns and tendencies,
Exactly.
not putting people into boxes.
Right.
Now, are you ready to get into some of the more complex personality types?
Let's do it.
I'm especially curious about what King has to say about narcissists. I've definitely encountered a few people who fit that description,
Sure.
but I'm wondering if there are some subtler signs I've been missing.
King dedicates a whole section to recognizing narcissistic tendencies.
Oh, wow.
He explains that while confidence can be a positive trait, narcissists often take it to an extreme,
Okay.
with an inflated sense of self-importance
Right.
and a lack of empathy for others.
So it's not just about being a bit self-centered.
Right.
What are some red flags to watch out for?
King says to pay attention to how someone talks about themselves.
Okay.
Do they constantly steer the conversation back to their own accomplishments? Do they minimize or dismiss other people's experiences?
Okay.
Those could be signs of a deeper narcissistic pattern.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not just about bragging.
Right.
It's about how they relate to others in the conversation.
Exactly. And King points out that narcissists often have a way of making everything about them,
Okay.
even when they're seemingly complimenting someone.
Yeah.
There's often a subtle way they bring it back to themselves.
Wow. That's actually pretty insightful.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how these subtle patterns can reveal a lot about someone's personality. What about the other end of the spectrum?
Okay.
Are there any positive personality types King highlights?
He talks about empaths,
Empaths.
people who are highly attuned to the emotions of those around them.
Okay.
They're often deeply compassionate and intuitive,
Mm-hmm.
able to pick up on subtle cues that others might miss.
Empaths.
Yeah.
Those are the folks who can walk into a room and instantly sense the vibe, right?
Right.
Like they can tell if there's tension or if everyone's feeling happy and relaxed.
Exactly. They're like emotional sponges,
Okay.
absorbing the energy of their surroundings.
Interesting.
King explains that this sensitivity can be both a gift and a challenge.
I can imagine it could be overwhelming at times.
Yeah,
Especially if they're constantly bombarded with other people's emotions.
that's true.
Yeah.
King suggests that empaths often need time alone
Uh-huh.
to recharge and process all that emotional input.
Okay.
But he also emphasizes the incredible strengths they bring to relationships.
So empaths are the friends you go to when you need someone to really listen and understand.
They're often amazing listeners
Okay.
and incredibly supportive friends.
Uh-huh.
King says they have this natural ability to connect with others
Okay.
on a deep emotional level,
Right.
which can make them incredibly valuable in all sorts of relationships.
It's fascinating to think about how these different personality types interact and influence each other.
It is.
But how do I actually use this knowledge
Okay.
in real life situations?
Well, let's shift gears and talk about how to apply these people reading skills
Okay.
to specific social scenarios.
Okay.
King offers some great advice for navigating tricky interactions, like those awkward networking events,
Okay.
or even a high-stakes meeting with your boss.
Perfect timing.
Rubric.
I'm attending a networking event next week,
Okay.
and I always feel so out of my element. Any tips for surviving those awkward conversations?
King suggests going in with the mindset that everyone is feeling a bit awkward.
Okay.
Remember, you're not alone.
Right.
Instead of trying to impress everyone,
Uh-huh.
focus on finding common ground.
Oh.
He recommends using those unlocking questions to spark genuine conversations.
Okay, so ditch the rehearsed elevator pitch
Yeah.
and focus on having a real conversation.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about collecting business cards.
Right.
It's about making authentic connections.
Uh-huh.
Even if you only have a few meaningful conversations,
Okay.
it's more valuable than a stack of cards from people you barely spoke to.
That's great advice.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to try that approach at the next networking event.
Okay, good.
Now, what about those high-stakes meetings with your boss? Any tips for decoding their body language and making sure the meeting goes smoothly?
King says to pay close attention to their baseline behavior.
Okay, their baseline behavior.
How do they normally sit, gesture, and make eye contact? Once you have a sense of their normal patterns,
Okay.
you can start to look for any deviations that might signal their mood or reaction to what you're saying.
So if my boss usually makes direct eye contact,
Yeah.
but suddenly starts looking away when I bring up a certain project, that could be a sign that they have some concerns.
Exactly. It could be a subtle cue
Yeah.
that you need to adjust your approach
Okay.
or address their unspoken reservations.
This is so helpful.
That
I feel like I'm finally getting a glimpse behind the curtain of those sometimes intimidating interactions.
Oh, no, right.
And remember,
Yes.
King emphasizes that reading people is not about manipulation or judgment.
No, not at all.
It's about fostering understanding,
Right.
building empathy,
Exactly.
and ultimately creating more meaningful connections.
That's a great point.
I'm starting to see how this knowledge can not only help me navigate specific situations, but also become a more compassionate and insightful person overall.
I think so too.
This deep dive has been eye-opening.
I'm glad to hear it. King's book really does offer a wealth of knowledge about human behavior,
Yeah.
but we've only scratched the surface.
Okay.
Are you ready to dive even deeper?
Absolutely. I'm hooked.
Yeah.
What else can we uncover? I'm ready to uncover more of these people reading secrets.
Okay.
What other fascinating insights does King offer in his book?
Well, he dives deeper into specific techniques for decoding those nonverbal cues.
Okay.
For example, he has a whole section on microexpressions,
Microexpressions.
those fleeting facial expressions
Oh, okay.
that can reveal hidden emotions,
Hmm.
even if someone is trying to mask them.
Microexpressions. That sounds intense.
Yeah.
Are you telling me I need to become some kind of human lie detector?
Not exactly. King emphasizes that microexpressions are just one small piece of the puzzle,
Okay.
but they can be particularly revealing because they're often involuntary.
Okay.
Even if someone is trying to control their facial expressions,
Right.
these tiny, split-second movements can betray their true feelings.
Okay, so I'm not going to catch someone in a lie just because their left eyebrow twitched.
Right.
But understanding these microexpressions could give me a little more insight into what someone might be thinking or feeling,
Yeah.
even if they're not saying it out loud.
Precisely.
Okay.
And King actually provides a sort of cheat sheet
Oh,
for
okay.
recognizing common microexpressions.
Oh, cool.
For example, a slight lip curl, even if it's quickly covered up by a smile,
Okay.
can indicate contempt or disdain.
Wow, that's pretty subtle.
It is.
I'm starting to see how paying attention to these tiny details can really add up to a more nuanced understanding of people's behavior.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, I'm a little worried about overanalyzing every little twitch and gesture. How do I avoid going overboard with all of this?
Well, King stresses that balance is key.
Okay.
He says the goal is not to become hypervigilant or suspicious
Right.
of everyone around you.
Of course not.
It's about cultivating a sense of awareness
Yep.
and using these tools to enhance your interactions, not to dissect them to death.
So it's more about tuning into those subtle cues,
Exactly.
not obsessing over every raised eyebrow or pursed lip.
Right. Think of it as adding another layer to your understanding of people.
Okay.
You're not throwing out your intuition
Right.
or your ability to connect on a human level.
Yeah.
You're really expanding your toolbox for reading between the lines.
That's a good way to look at it.
Yeah.
It's like I'm learning a new language,
Uh-huh.
the language of nonverbal communication.
I like that.
And the more fluent I become,
Yeah.
the better I'll be able to understand and navigate the complexities of human interaction.
That's a great analogy. And just like learning any new language,
Right.
it takes time, practice,
Yeah.
and a willingness to be open to new perspectives.
This deep dive has definitely given me a whole new perspective on
Uh-huh.
how much I don't know about how people communicate.
Yeah.
It's a little humbling, to be honest.
I think that's a healthy response.
Yeah.
The more we learn about human behavior,
Right.
the more we realize how much there is to discover.
That's true.
And that's what makes it so fascinating.
It's like we've just scratched the surface of this vast, intricate world
Uh-huh.
of nonverbal communication.
It is a big world.
And I'm feeling inspired to keep exploring.
That's the spirit. King's book is a great starting point.
Yeah.
But remember, the real learning happens in your everyday interactions.
So it's about taking these tools and techniques
Yeah,
and putting them into practice in the real world.
exactly.
No more autopilot mode.
Right.
I'm going to start paying closer attention to those subtle cues,
Okay,
asking those unlocking questions,
good.
and seeing what I can uncover.
That's the key to becoming a true people reader.
Right.
It's not just about absorbing information.
Yeah.
It's about applying it to your life
Uh-huh.
and seeing the world through a more insightful lens.
This has been such an enlightening deep dive.
I agree.
Thank you for sharing your expertise
You're welcome.
and helping me see human behavior in a whole new light.
It's been my pleasure.
Remember, the journey of understanding people is an ongoing process.
It is.
Keep those minds curious,
Uh-huh.
those eyes observant,
Yes.
and those hearts open.
Well said.
To our listeners, we hope you enjoyed this deep dive
Yes.
into Patrick King's Read People Like a Book.
It's a good one.
Be forth and read people wisely.
And may your newfound insights lead to deeper connections
Yes.
and a greater understanding of this fascinating world of human behavior.
Until next time, keep those minds curious.